quickly. Thank you. Yes, we're starting the end mass incarceration and the death penalty working group meeting. It's Monday, May 6th, and we have 5 people in our meeting to get started. And the agenda, George. Did you put it up?
Looks like 4 people to me. 1, 2. Oh, there's Joan Goddard.
Yeah, how did you not see Joan? She's been here quite a while. George, could you just read it quickly? I'm using my phone, so it's impossible.
We start with check-in, your name, your branch, your role, and how's your day going? Then quick reports on EMI work state by state, and then EMI in Gaza, announcements, and our next meeting.
Oh, thank you, George. Well, I'll start with the check-in. I'm Teresa Elamine, organizer for the Fannie Lou Hamer branch and Advancing Human Rights Committee chair. Day started out great at 8 a.m. Eastern Time with the Nairobi Summit of the Future meeting with over 220 women. It was amazing. Women from all over the world. I heard people from Turkey and South Africa and everywhere. And then after the meeting, Robin, because Robin was in that meeting, I pushed back in my chair and fell backwards, bang, my head on the floor. And I always laughed at those commercials and stuff. Oh, I've fallen and I can't get up. I couldn't get up for 45 minutes. I was crawling on the floor. Well, at any rate, oh yeah, it was awful. But I finally got on my knees. See, that's what I was trying to avoid because my knees hurt so bad. When I finally realized there was no way to do it except to get on my knees. So I got on my knees, I grabbed onto something steady, and then I got one leg up and then the second leg up. So this is my last work thing today. I'm just gonna rest and relax for the rest of the day. Sorry to be boring you with all of that. So could we go to Philip Cole and then Joan Goddard?
Yeah, I'm Philip Cole and a member of the San Francisco branch. And basically, with the visit with my doctor today, who said my voice is getting better. So that's good.
Oh, wonderful. Joan.
Hi, I'm overwhelmed, Teresa, with what you just told us. Oh my gosh. Frustrating and scary, huh?
Oh, it is really scary when you fall down and you can't get up. It is bad.
Yeah, right. Oh, well, you look good, but mercy. Oh. Yeah, this is Joan Goddard in San Jose, California, and I'm overwhelmed with both what Teresa just told us, but also obviously what's happening in Gaza and so on. So that's all for me from right now. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll go with Robin Lloyd, then Mary White, then Diane Blay.
Okay, Robin Lloyd, Burlington, Vermont, Wilf. I'm doing okay. I'd like to add some items to the agenda today, or some discussions, some things I'm not understanding that's happening in Wilf.
Well, Robin, say how many and how much so we can act accordingly because we have a hard stop at 3. So what things would you like to add, Robin?
Well, the discussion of why the the peace, Pentagon got dumped out of Wilf. And secondly, Teresa, why you are upset now at International Wilf getting involved with US Wilf. I thought you wanted International Wilf to, you were calling them in at a certain point, and now I
Oh,
see.
well, Robin,
And I don't understand the
Robin,
reason for these emails.
Robin, stop. I can tell you right now, those are not two topics for this meeting. When we get together with the BLC and EDAC, we will thoroughly discuss that.
Oh, that's what those
So,
meetings are? Okay.
yeah, this is the end mass incarceration and the death penalty. It is not for the internal struggles. And that's news to me. I hadn't heard that about the Pentagon branch. But at any rate, next is Mary White.
Good afternoon. I'm Mary White. I'm from Durham, and I'm associated with the Triangle Whip, which met last weekend in person, and 2 weeks ago now. And the organization is moving along and thriving. So that's what I'm reporting.
Wonderful. Well, what about you in terms of your personal things? So, because you're up in the 80s now, aren't you, Mary?
Yes, I am. I'm still moving forward with several different groups that I work with, but I am planning to take a 3-month absence from some of these duties to work on some family project that I need to complete. So that's where I am at this time.
Good. Well, you sound great. Can't wait to see you. I'll be in Durham on May 18th. So maybe I can catch up with you.
But we'll talk about it. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, Diane Blake.
Hi, I caught a horrible cold from my granddaughter who has a ruptured eardrum and double ear infections, but I didn't know it at the time. Anyway, I'm suffering, so I'm just going to listen. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Diane. So we'll go with Gloria and then George.
Hi, I'm Gloria McMillan from the Tucson and Chicago branches. And we had a very successful and productive meeting on Saturday in reviving the Chicago branch. And it also dealt with some lost history that was very important to our peace movement. So I'm happy about that. On this group, I kind of got ushered in. I wasn't always active with this group, but I will start researching the ending mass incarceration in Northwest Indiana, especially because they have Gary as part of it. And you know Gary. I hope you all know about Gary. So that's a real problem of mass incarceration. So I'm going to be working on that one. Good to be here. Good to see you all.
Yes, Saturday was wonderful. I was so impressed, and Zenobia and Rima and the folks. So there really is a branch in formation in Chicago. Great work, Gloria. Great work. So George, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. George Friday here in the Southern Piedmont branch in Shelby, North Carolina. I am the program committee chair on the board, and my day is going better than expected. I'm glad to be here.
Great. Well, if we could do a quick round of reports, because I've just been so struck by the demonstrations in solidarity with Palestine. And Israel basically announced today that they're going into Rafah and they're telling everybody to get out, like where they're going to go. So I'm eager for us to talk about the open air prison mass incarceration in Gaza. But in the state of Georgia, we're still dealing with the efforts to end solitary confinement, and that's being done by the very, very busy Southern Center for Human Rights. And they also work on death penalty cases. And someone was killed by the state recently. So Columbus is a place where the police officers have gone to Israel. And it was announced some years ago, so I'm investigating that. And I texted the city manager earlier, and he hasn't responded yet, but I know he will because he's good about that. I was asking him, when was that you said you went to Israel, and what was the purpose of the trip? So I think that is another part of what we're doing in terms of police officers being trained by the IDF. So that's kind of what I'm doing in Georgia. So could we go to California, the big state of California, with two people in the meeting? What you got, Joan? What you got, Philip?
I've got a printout of 11 pages of articles which don't just go chronologically, but I keep finding the new ones about California's efforts to end mass incarceration, basically, I guess, not as thoroughly as we'd like, of course, but closing some prisons and changing the death penalty. I'm sorry, I can't think of the horrible what it is where they kill people. The San Quentin to a mental health facility for the prison system and so on. But probably Philip has something more up to date or more detailed. Thank you.
Well, I will say this. The women's prison in Dublin, California, the only women's prison on the West Coast, was closed last week. And they've dispersed many of the women across the country. And there was a lot of early releases. And it was closed because the warden and his staff had been sexually taking advantage of the prisoners. The warden, I believe, is in jail now, along with several of the staff members. And there's one more staff member going to trial shortly. They just finished closing it up this week. That's it.
Wow. Well, that was very interesting on both pieces. And Joan, it is important to know that the death penalty is turning, the place where they kill people is turning into a mental health facility. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, that's what I understand. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
The jails and the prisons have become mental health facilities. That's a complaint that's happening here in Columbus because you have all the mentally ill and you're locking them up, and so they have to have their medications. So the healthcare bills are soaring in the jail here, and that's what the sheriff is complaining about because he's housing the mentally ill. So great, thanks for that report, California. So could we hear from North Carolina, Mary and George? What do you know lately?
I can go first unless you prefer to go first, Mary.
Well, I would just say that this is a system that I have not been keeping up with definitively because my work has been basically geared toward universal health care. Although about a year or so ago, I did have a forum planned, which went off well with which presented some information from the North Carolina prison system. And I would just like to say that it just came to my mind that over 20 years ago, perhaps, I in my hometown area, I did work in the prison system for a short period of time.
Wow.
Sorry, I just had to get the phone so it would stop ringing. So I ended up working for a psychologists, and so I am very much aware that they do use experimental drug challenges for the inmates. I was made aware of that. I hope that's not continuing, and that may be something that I would like to look into in the future to see if that's still going on in North Carolina. So that's my statement for today.
Absolutely. George?
Sure. Well, across the state, there are low level and to maximum security facilities. Every county has at least one, and some detention centers. Some counties have a multiple something unit that includes a detention center. My county that I live in now, Cleveland County, has such a detention center, which means they also will detain people who are not documented. And several of those detention centers surrounding my area, and they're not that many. There's one in Cleveland County, one in near Hickory. I can't think of the county now. And then moving east from here. And there are a number, 3 counties in a row have them on the western part of the state, which seems unusual in terms of any undocumented people. But the death penalty hasn't been used in North Carolina for years and years. It's unlikely to be used. There are several organizations working to end mass incarceration. The one I'm most familiar with near here, and it's statewide, but it's also has offices in Charlotte, is Forward Justice and Second Chance Alliance. So working with those to try to, as Mary was talking about, having a forum, we're hoping our branch can put together a forum close to or around Father's Day. I believe that's all. Oh, one thing that won't surprise you, Teresa Elamine, is years ago in 2018, Durham City voted to not allow any IDF training in the county. That was 2018. That's all I have.
Thank you, George. I do remember that because the state, the county commission was getting the sheriff's deputies trained, and there was a company that was part of that, and so they let them go as the contractors. But thank you, George. That's important to know about the IDF connection. So there's a bunch of stuff in the chat, but we have Patrick and Margaret who joined us. So who's joined us? I want to say Peggy.
I think it might be Cricket.
No, the name is Patrick and Margaret.
Okay. It's Margaret Pecoraro.
Margaret Pecoraro, Tucson member.
Is she talking?
I'm here. We just joined. I'm sorry we couldn't get here any earlier.
Oh, this is fine. Please, introduction. The introduction is your name, your branch, and how's your day going?
Well, I'm Margaret Pecoraro from Tucson, and the day's going just fine so far. I just didn't get there in enough time to start at the beginning, and I'm hoping there's a full recording that we can hear later too. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. There is a recording. Well, let's go to the next Tucson person, Gloria.
Hello, I'm back. I did put in things. I am still in the researching it phase, and some interesting facts about Northwest Indiana, which includes Gary, which has a lot of problems due to the failure of capitalism and U.S. Steel abandoning them. Okay, a huge 498% increase in incarceration from 1980 through 2018. I don't know how other states compare. That's pretty big. And that's Indiana down below. ACLU is addressing the huge incarceration rate and showing steps that are preventative. But what I want to show you, because my focus is communications, as I think most of you know that have been knowing me for a while. I follow the Northwest Indiana Times newspaper, and I don't know how many other papers maybe in the South do this, but they do this. They really focus on mugshots. They put a lot of mugshots right there. They're featured on the online Northwest Indiana Times, really. And that's going on, but it was kind of ironic when I tried to pull it up. They also have a big story on their corrupt sheriff. So you can see both.
Wow, that's
Got 151 months for whatever he did. I didn't have time to read it.
wow. Well, thank you for the reports. So I have a button that I've been wearing lately. Gaza is in my heart, and it really is true, given what's happening. But I thought we would just start by saying what the universities are in your area where the students are engaged. And in Georgia, I was so stunned because Morehouse is a pretty Parsippany Sedity school that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. went to. And you never much hear about anything that they're doing in the way of protests around larger political questions. You know, they do a lot around police brutality, etc. But the young man, student leader, reported that Biden is the commencement speaker at Morehouse this year, and that it's really cold, 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 that he's not going to get a great reception because of Gaza. And that was really interesting to hear on National Public Radio here. So the students in the cluster of HBCUs in Atlanta are standing up to the Israeli genocide. And so all over the country is happening, and I've been just following the stories. But who wants to go next? Can we hear about the University of North Carolina with all those 16 campuses? What's going on, Georgia, and North Carolina?
In North Carolina, UNC Chapel Hill, UNC Charlotte, and North Carolina State so far are the only state-sponsored schools that that have protests or encampments. There's an encampment at UNC and Charlotte, not one at State, although there are protests that are growing among students at State. There are students at Shaw University in Raleigh, HBCU, are protesting, as they are at, there's Aggies for Palestine. That's students and alumni of North Carolina A&T in Greensboro, which is also an HBCU. The UNC administration has threatened to delay graduation, which is set for, I believe, this Sunday. And I don't know, as of yesterday, it was a threat and not a fact. I don't know today if it's a fact yet. I'd have to check in. And also, full disclosure in terms of being fair or whatever, that school in Durham that people refer to as Duke also has an encampment. That's it.
Oh, yeah. Well, Duke, see, way back, SARN had a conference at Duke because they've always had a strong Palestine solidarity movement, but they also have a very strong Zionist presence on the campus. And they gave us a real hard time. It's been about 20 years ago that we did, it was called the Black Palestinian Dialogue. So we brought together Black activists, actually Lucy Murphy, who you all know from the DMV branch, she came in for that. So it's not surprising that Duke has something going on. But George, in terms of the UNC campus, UNC Chapel Hill is the flagship, and all the big campuses that you name, NC State, you got all the big campuses. So that's like North Carolina is on fire. Thank you, George. Is there any college and university in Vermont, Robin?
Yeah, of course. University of Vermont here in Burlington, there is an encampment. I've been up there a few times. Their demand was that Linda Greenfield, the official representative of our government to the United Nations, be disinvited for the graduation ceremony, and she's not coming. So they've won a point already, but they're still going up there, as far as I know. I did some gardening and pulled a muscle, so that hindered me from walking around as much as I wanted for a few days, but I'm recovering. And tonight is our city council meeting with our new progressive mayor, and all sorts of things could burst forth tonight, possibly. And what else was I thinking of? Oh, it's there's a candidate running against our Republican governor that may change things also in Vermont.
Great. Well, since we're in New England, one of my favorite states, Rhode Island, and Brown University, the hotbed of radicalism, they were able to get the university to meet their BDS demand, because it is all about the BDS. Everybody understands that. How could we get the universities to divest and not do any business with the state of Israel or any companies in Israel? So Brown University had a victory, so they took down their encampment. I guess that was the deal. We'll do what you say, you just take it down. And so now, because Brown generally graduates, it's on the Memorial Day weekend. So now I guess they could get back to planning their graduation. Good news at Brown University in New England, the People's Republic of Rhode Island. So what about the big state of California? What's going on there?
Philip, do you want to start?
Well, okay. The Stanford University encampment is still in place. So as you see, Berkeley, Stanford should be meeting with their provost today to talk. I take that back. The San Francisco State University will be meeting with their provost today to talk about coming to a peaceful end. All the local colleges, University of Stanford, UC Berkeley, San Francisco State, they have taken the Mahatma Gandhi type of protest. Has been very organized, very peaceful. And my granddaughter is graduating from San Francisco State at the end of the month, and I'm hoping for a peaceful resolution so we can see her graduate after 4 years of me suffering through her homework trials and tribulations. Thank you.
Well, that's great news. You got a granddaughter. It just amazes me that all of this people with the multiple family generations. Well, Philip, I've learned so much about you. Thank you so much for sharing on the call today. Joan, did you want to add anything else?
I just wanted to mention, I'm not understanding Philip really well, but I don't think he mentioned San Jose State, and they have had demonstrations as well as Stanford. I think he mentioned. Anyway, in Southern California, we've got the two examples of really, really big difficulties with UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, I believe it is, that had huge demonstrations and huge, law enforcement reaction, et cetera, et cetera. But also Riverside University at Riverside actually had a calm and successful university administration in working with the students and faculty to come up with the statements, et cetera, and actually smiling when they were talking about it in a photo I saw. So that's another angle on California.
A statement related to what?
Related to Gaza. These demonstrations are about Gaza and the West Bank sometimes.
Well, let me add this in about California, the Bay Area schools. One of the reasons why they did not send in the police like UCLA and USC is because the universities here are very radical, and they're to massive demonstrations and protests, and they know that it's counterproductive to send the police in to basically disrupt a protest and people exercising their First Amendment rights. So luckily we have civilized universities in the Bay Area.
But not UCLA.
UCLA is not in the Bay Area. They're in that horrible swamp down or desert down there called Los.
What exactly?
Well, you know, this is the anniversary of Kent State. And so there are a lot of news stories about what happened 54 years ago and the threats to do this thing, bringing in National Guard. So the campuses are on fire. So Cece, I see you join us. If you could do a quick introduction, your name, your branch, your roles and will, and how's your day going? And then tell us what you know about those Atlanta area schools and the pro-Palestine demonstrations.
Hey everybody, I'm Cece Anderson, Metro Atlanta branch, also personnel chair. Thank you, Teresa. I just wanted to mention that Emory University students have been really protesting and really out there more so than Georgia Tech, Georgia State, and the AU Center. They've been protesting peacefully, I think because it's graduation time and everybody wants that cap and gown and that diploma. So they don't want anything to deter them from getting that diploma. But most of all, the Emory students are out there and they're protesting also against the president. They want him removed. And go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying, because Emory is a kind of hotty-toddy school with the big
Absolutely.
hospital and everything. So for them to be out there, that's a very big deal.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So basically, everybody is trying to make a stance, trying to make, but you know, we have a governor, Brian Kemp, who's sitting on ready to zip tie anybody who doesn't follow the rules and protesting peacefully. And there have been some flag burnings and flag waving, but most of all, it's been peaceful. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Anyone else that we missed? Peggy, where do you live?
You missed me.
Oh, Gloria, is that you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go
I
ahead.
mean, I want to report. We had terrible times here in Tucson. You need to know this. They used tear gas. They used rubber bullets. They used pepper balls. They arrested a number of students. They have dismantled the camp. Things are not good in Tucson. And also the president of the college has already been deposed. He's a bad president. He ran the college into $100 and some million of debt with a for-profit college that he bought like a pig in a poke. And so 100 professors protested his handling of the students here. And it must be one of the worst in the country. It's terrible. People were arrested. I'm sure they were expelled too.
I hadn't read about
that is
that
awful.
at all.
I haven't heard a word about it. And this is in Tucson, Gloria?
Tucson, Arizona. And they're also suspending a lot of students in ASU over in Phoenix, and they're in court right now about how many of them are going to be suspended. They don't mess around with protests in Arizona. It's a whole different thing.
Well, I'm getting the picture. I had no idea. Well, I keep wanting to call Margaret Peggy for some reason. There was another Margaret I knew, a member in the Triangle Branch. You know, I'm talking about Mary White, and we called her Peggy. Uh, um, did you want to report, Margaret, anything more around Arizona? Because that's a great report we just got from Gloria. Anything to add?
I was just wondering more about the details of USC too from the California report. I, people, I just heard USC mentioned once, but not in detail. Does anyone have anything further to report about USC in Los Angeles?
Do you know any more, Joan?
I'm trying to figure out which university it is in Riverside that did such a good job. Is that USC? Is that a
No,
USC
The
branch?
University of Southern California.
USC is in Los Angeles.
Okay,
It's not
no,
UCLA,
I'm
it's
sorry, I don't know about USC. Philip,
University
you?
of Southern California. Yeah, I saw the headlines, but I didn't follow the details. I'm sorry, but there was quite a protest there too. And I
Yeah.
just don't know the outcome.
Yeah.
Well, we have Kim Poole who's joined us. So Kim, we're talking about the student protests around colleges and universities. So what do you know around the DC, Baltimore area? Any students protesting? See, I thought Kim was in Nairobi because she was in that meeting with us this morning and she raised her hand saying she was going to be in Nairobi. Well, Kim, when you unmute yourself, be sure to be prepared to do a quick introduction. One of our newest members who joined February 16th, and she's rolling. Kim.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry that I was late today. Really passionately committed to ending mass incarceration for Black and Brown people, especially. And so I would love to hear more in the recording about what Miss Gloria presented on happening over in Arizona. So in reference to the civil society discussion that is being
Well, Kim, if you could do a quick introduction, because there are some people here who may not have met you or been in any correspondence. So if you could say who you are, what your branch is.
Absolutely. Sorry for jumping the gun. So again, I'm Kim Poole. New to WILF, not even 90 days yet. But I'm here in DMV, in WILF DMV, serving alongside Tara and Miss Lucy and Miss Martha. And I believe this is the 4th iteration of our branch revitalization. And I'm looking forward to being a part of that.
Well, not exactly. There were several failed attempts. And this last time, June of 2022, the Southern Anti-Racism Network put hundreds of dollars into restarting the DMV branch. And I called on my longtime comrade Lucy to get it started. But what we're doing now, Kim, so you won't get off topic, is we're talking about student protests. We're at the point on the agenda where we're talking about ending mass incarceration in Gaza. So that big open air prison with 1 million people or more, including children and others. We're talking on that topic, but to get started with it, we're talking about the student protests in support of a free Palestine. So what's happening in the Baltimore, D.C. area or anywhere else, you know?
So right now in the DMV, there are 2 major encampments that I'm familiar with. One is at Johns Hopkins University here in Baltimore City. And they've attempted to regulate the times that the students can protest. The other is an encampment at George Washington University. And George Washington University, they've begun to suspend students based on their involvement in the protest. And so I think Miss Lucy Murphy is definitely the expert, being down there in DC. Tara has been to the encampment several times to report. She reported live from the encampment on April 28th, which is Wilf's 109th anniversary. And so if there's a written way to submit updates, that may be an easier way to make sure we're positively contributing from our branch. I certainly don't want to speak on behalf of our branch. I'm not in leadership, but I will be at our next meeting on the 13th, and you're all welcome to join us there.
Yeah, I'll be there, but we aren't that formal, Kim. So these working group meetings, we say what we say, it's all recorded. And so the information that we share here is what it is. So there's no need for a formal written report on the working group conversations. We do need minutes from the AHR umbrella meetings, and I think you're holding some. But at any rate, I'll mention a couple of other universities in the Midwest, because my announcement at the end is going to be about a tour. UN Decade Reparations organized the South Solidarity Tour. I'll mention. But for now, for this topic, Case Western University in Cleveland, they got big activity going there. And then in Ann Arbor, at the University of Michigan, big activity there. And Alan Haber in the Ann Arbor Ypsilanti branch, he'll be speaking at the stop on the tour. So let's get some reactions from folks on how we build the movement for a free Palestine with all of this motion that's happening in the U.S. And now I saw the report from Tura where the U.S. is holding back weapons from Israel. So there is progress, I think, however small, being made. Any other thoughts about what we can do in this moment in collaboration with the Middle East Peace and Justice Action Committee? Because the biggest human rights catastrophe going in the world right now is what's happening in Gaza, because the famine has hit. So people don't have enough food. So all those children and families are really suffering. So from a human rights perspective, our collaboration with Middle East Peace and Justice Action Committee to end the mass incarceration of Gaza. Let's hear your thoughts. Please jump in. Well, I'm going to put you on the spot, Robin, because you've seen a number of wars in your time, and you've always been in Wilf because you're like a third generation Wilfer. The media is saying this is likened to the Vietnam era, and I'm old enough to remember the Vietnam era and how everything came together. The protests, it was just significant, but it also involved the resistors in the military. And I know the Black resistors, and there are many folks in Veterans for Peace, etc., who left the United States, went to Canada. So it was a very big deal in the Vietnam era. But these student protests, which were numerous then and numerous now, but they don't have a lot of other momentum. So anybody want to speak to that? Yeah, we're anti-war people, and we've been studying and working to try to end war. Do we have any analysis that could contribute to us advancing our cause for peace?
Well, I'll just say that our anti-nuclear group here in Vermont is put a suggestion in the box, and there's a suggestion box on a tree right in the middle of the encampment up at University of Vermont, that we would like to talk with them about the danger of nuclear weapons being brought in some way due to the problems in Gaza and the fact that the countries around Israel and Palestine are in a state of upheaval because of the genocide, and then there's Iran over there, and just wanting to bring this issue of the danger of nuclear weapons on a larger scale, but focused on beginning the problems in the Middle East. And I haven't heard from them yet whether we've been invited. I attended one of their discussions. It was very moving. A professor speaking about the history of Zionism. He's a philosophy professor or maybe history professor up at St. Michael's College, and the students were all listening. It was such a beautiful learning experience of really wanting to savor what he was saying and responding to it and so on. So I like what's going on there, but our group is trying to bring an awareness of the nuclear issue to what's going on in the Middle East.
Oh, well, that's important. Does Israel have nuclear weapons?
Well, of course they do, but they have been allowed to pretend that they don't. And that's a whole history in itself. The United States has known that Israel has nuclear weapons. And, the whole hostility towards Iran is that they have been trying to get nuclear weapons. Then they, under Obama, made an agreement, got an agreement made with Iran that they would stop making nuclear weapons, and there would be less sanctions against them. And then Trump threw that in the wastebasket. And so Iran is probably building up nuclear weapons. And you can see in the current atmosphere of the hostilities there, that Iran feels vulnerable without nuclear weapons because Israel could just devastate them like that.
Well, it would be a crazy thing to use nuclear weapons, but as Patrick O'Neill says, they will use them eventually. And I think at this point, we have to deal with our messaging. And George, I'm going to put you on the spot because we've been meeting every 2 weeks on the No to NATO showdown that's going to happen in July with many of those countries with nuclear weapons. And so what we're doing now is lifting up Gaza. So at our last meeting on May 3rd, WILF members from the Lebanon section were present, Hala and Shireen. And so they were asked to speak on the big stage, and they were suggesting someone else. But it's clear that the message of Gaza and the Palestinians will be on the stage in July, and it may be one of our WILF sisters from the Lebanon section who will be on the stage, because George invited them to our meeting, and they were welcome because everybody says it's all about Palestine. But the one hurdle I want to mention that we have to overcome in the South, because Israel has created an atmosphere of Christian Zionism. So they pay for trips, particularly for Black Baptists and other churches to go to the Holy Land. And so now when you hear people talk about the protests, Israel is putting out the line. They are pro-Hamas. The pro-Hamas protests. Somebody came to my yard sale and she said, yeah, those pro-Hamas demonstrations with those students. I said, what are you talking about? They're pro-free Palestine. She said, oh, they're pro-Hamas. And so that's the message that Israel is getting out. And so as we've been talking about, how do we explain how NATO is a bad thing? I think we have to be real strong in developing better messages. And Mary, if you could talk, I see what you've written in the chat, but definitely we need a clear message that supports what South Africa and others are saying, and we have to be able to support the messaging in our anti-war work. So please read what Mary wrote in the chat. Mary, do you want to say anything about it? Explaining about the open air prison of Gaza. Well, it's what is called in the peace circle, so it's fairly common language among us. But I think now that we see the catastrophe of famine in Gaza, and then the possibility of all-out slaughter by Israel in Rafah. So did you want to say more about what you've written, Mary, in terms of what we might do?
I'm just saying, as an organization, probably it would reflect us well to make a statement about it that can be publicized someplace. I mean, that's to be decided about the group, by the group rather. And I think it would further our purposes if we find a way to do that. And I was suggesting that each of us could present some statements and submit them, and someone who's good at editing could organize it into a, protest message.
Well, Mary, we need to collaborate with the Middle East Peace and Justice Action Committee, because those are the folks who normally would take up this topic. I added it in because I'm just so moved by the protests and hearing the students say intifada. So the Columbia students have gone all the way and they dropped big flags saying intifada. And the Jewish students are saying, I could understand them saying free Palestine from the river to the sea. But when they drop intifada, that's a problem. So this is the messaging and the nuances of it, Mary, that we need to get up with the Middle East Peace and Justice Action Committee, because our work is primarily focused on ending mass incarceration in the U.S. But because of what's going on worldwide that cannot be ignored, I added this to the agenda for today, but it does require collaboration with Jan Quarterman and others in the Middle East Peace and Justice Action Committee. Well, we're at the point of announcements, and I'll just make my quick announcement. Folks probably remember the Northeast Solidarity Tour that went to several branches. Well, this short tour, which is going to Ohio and Michigan, is going to be via Zoom, so everybody will be able to attend. So on May 21st, from 7 until 8:30 via Zoom, it's a Tuesday, we're going to be talking about UN Decade reparations, organized the South Solidarity. And because of the Palestinian issue at Case Western, we'll probably have a student from Case Western speaking about the Free Palestine movement there. And then on Thursday, May 23rd, it will be the Michigan stop. And we'll have Maureen Taylor talking about the water issues in Flint and Detroit. And Alan Haber will do his memory of being Students for a Democratic Society, a student back at Berkeley when he started that. And then we'll probably have a student from Ann Arbor, Michigan on the Palestinians. So that's what I have coming up in the way of announcements, and it's going to be on Zoom. So George and I will be Zooming because she's a Zoom queen and she's going to set it all up. So next week, we'll be probably putting it out on the list. And I will say this is sponsored by the Southern Anti-Racism Network, and it's part of our 25th anniversary celebration that we'll be doing on into June. Are there any other announcements?
Well, I raised my hand back there. Wilf International used to have a website that it was not a Wilf website, but it was a progressive, a place for progressives to publish their statements. And I'm forgetting the name of it. But it's obviously something we need. And I think Mary is bringing up an interesting point where when we get something together, how do we get it out beyond ourselves? So I will try to research that website and send it to Mary. And
Yes.
I have your email, Mary, but
yes, that would be good if you could find out about that, Robin.
And send it to all of us.
Yeah,
exactly. Because if you send it to George, she has all of our emails. But the other thing is that the Palestine Working Group of Wilf International, since you brought up Wilf International, Robin, the next meeting, George, isn't it May 13th?
I believe so. I'm going to look at my calendar right now.
And I believe it's going to be at 2 a.m. in the morning because of what time it will be in Lebanon and Palestine. It'll be 2 a.m. for us. And I do believe that Lucy Murphy is planning on attending, and I'm a all-night kind of person. So I will definitely attend, and I know George is attending. So May 15th is marking the Nakba, 76 years. And so
May 13th.
Yeah, 2 a.m. So anybody in any branch doing anything around the Nakba commemoration of May 15th? I don't think we'll be able to do anything in the Fannie Lou Hamer branch area. Too busy. But we're at the 3 o'clock stop time. So our next meeting is June 3rd. That is the first Monday. And we'll meet at 2 p.m., just like today. So thank you all for coming. We had 11 participants in the meeting today. Really good. Thank you. Thank you, George.
George, could you stay on afterwards? I'd like to just talk with you if I could.
No, we're ending the Zoom, and you and George can talk by phone later.
Well, why?
Do you have my number? I can, or I'll find yours and call you either way. The phone is best. Great.
Yeah, we don't do the meeting after the meeting here. The meeting ends and the recording ends.